Hi, and welcome to another episode of Life Lessons in Bon Jovi songs. And we're doing the songs in chronological order. So we had the first album, we had the second album, and now we're at their third album, which was their biggie, Slippery When Wet from 1986. I mean, there are even people who are not even aware that there is music from Bon Jovi from before that album, or maybe only Runaway or something. Um, but I guess there would also be people who don't know that Runaway is a Bon Jovi song. So even in the 80s, the first two albums were kind of ignored, and after Slippery When Wet had made them big. So we're at that album, which may be the only Bon Jovi album that you knew, at least at the time, and maybe even now. So this is some uh, things that have to do with the album. This is the cassette, the CD, obviously, and here is the music. Um, so we're at the fourth song of the album, and I still have this because I was an original cassette listener to this album. So this is like the original 80s cassette. I know, like Wanted Dead or Alive is the fifth song because it's the last song on side A. And that's also how I know, like, oh yeah, Social Disease is the fourth song on side A. So it's funny how, if that is your reference, that you will kind of like keep that for the rest of your life. And also that I've often thought that from music that I do have on CD, or that I only listen to as a whole, albums that I only listen to as a whole, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to kind of just listen to it as if it is an A and a B side? Because I do think that it kind of like, brings, it gives a little bit of extra depth, because the artist thought about what should the final song be on side A. What should the final song be on side A? Yeah, so maybe that's a kind of like a uh, you know, like an experiment that you want to do with your favorite albums. Like, oh, what's the final song from side A, and what's the first song from side B? Okay, anyway, Social Disease is the fourth song on side A from the Slippery When Wet album, and it's not very well regarded. It's like, and I quote this. So I sometimes use a Bon Jovi songs ranked um, uh, article, and it has all the Bon Jovi songs, including the outtakes that never made it to studio albums, ranked. And it had an update since I printed this. So I printed this like 5 years ago or something. And so I have the old version. So the ranking here is excluding the albums that they made in 2020 and in 2024. But even here, even in this one, Social Disease is at 257. And I looked it up, and currently it's at 2074. So it dropped even like 15-ish points after the new albums were added. So the new albums have 15 songs on them that are better that are better than Social Disease. Yeah. And not just the albums, like including the outtakes, because the final two albums actually have, I think, 5 in total songs that were not on the albums, or 4, I don't know. Anyway, so the final two Bon Jovi albums, plus their outtakes, have come up with 15 songs that, according to the author of this article, which is Tony Kuzminski, are better than Social Disease. So no, it's not very well regarded. And to kind of like, I mean, we're not going to bash Social Disease. I have a very interesting story here that really kind of like will cement its legacy. But before we get there, allow me to read what Tony Kuzminski has said about Social Disease. The live version from 1990, which I don't know how to pronounce this word, Sigwet, I don't know, Sigwet. I'm not a native English speaker, as is proven now. From a cover of Bob Dylan's 7 Days is definitive. Otherwise, this completely throwaway keeps Slippery When Wet from being an unspoiled album. A throwaway that keeps Slippery When Wet from being an unspoiled album. Oh, Tony! I mean, the reason why and I think you should too, why Tony can get away with this is because he is so thorough in his work. I'm like, we're really lucky that we have someone that skilled to really, be able to do this work, and for having done this work. And this skill, like one of the ways you can see that in this just 2 sentences, is that he references the live version from Social Disease from 1990. So that's pretty cool. And the reason why Social Disease was segued. Segued? I think it's segued. Why it was segued from a cover of Bob Dylan's 7 Days is because they use a horn section. So if you just type in 7 Days, Bon Jovi, 1990, you will get these shows, which they did in London with the London Horns, I think they're called, Tower of London Horns. So just imagine a Bon Jovi concert, and they have really prepared a couple of cover songs with the Tower of London Horns. And one of them was Bob Dylan's 7 Days. And so they have this big horn section playing that song. They go through the song, and then at the end, it goes into Social Disease. And that is because Social Disease has a horn section on the original album. And this really, now we're really getting into what makes Social Disease so special, because it is the horn section song of the album. And why is that so special? Because of producer Bruce Fairbairn, who produced this album. And this was not just a breakthrough album for Bon Jovi, but also for Bruce Fairbairn. Again, I don't know if I pronounced the name correctly. So Bruce Fairbairn had done work. He was known in the industry, but he had not achieved his like mega star producer stardom that he would have after making this album. So he was on the verge of breakthrough, just like the band, and he was a horn player. So he would, every album that he produced from then on, but maybe also the ones he did before, I don't know, it would have at least one song with a horn section. So that became his signature like his trademark, kind of like, that was the trademark, that it was a Bruce Fairbairn album. So Social Disease, even though we can, dismiss it for its quality, I think that's just so great that it is what makes it a Bruce Fairbairn album. And I think that's just really fabulous. And yeah, I will definitely be listening to the song in a different way, with more appreciation of all these great minds coming together at this album. So the lyrics. Yeah, no, I will get to the lyrics in a moment. Bruce Fairbairn died of unknown causes in 1999, so that makes his body of work very concise and significant, and his status absolutely legendary. He was only 49, and he had such a great, like, one of the reasons it became such a or one of the factors influencing the success of this album was definitely that he produced it, because he was the one who made the band come to Vancouver. So he kind of like he wanted them out of their like natural habitat. So he wanted them fresh. He wanted them alert. He wanted them kind of like in a cooking pot to really create something magical. So there was a 2-bedroom apartment where the band would stay in Vancouver, and things got really wild. And we all know those stories, but it was also because Bruce Fairbairn had been in bands, and he was just really very adamant about the only working with bands who were really good live, and to really amalgamate them into like a gang, and to bring the magic of a live performance onto the album, and to really bring the identity, to really let it shine, to let the identity of an artist or a band really shine. So he was, in a way, he was the one who kind of like give them that extra little nudge towards being a band, towards togetherness. And he also made the album that came after that, which was New Jersey, which was also like, oh my god, it was such a great album, like unbelievable. But in 1992, they took Bob Rock as the producer of the album, and not Fairbairn. And they did that because Bob Rock had just made a Metallica album. But Bob Rock says, yeah, it was really different for me in 1992 than it had been in for the Slippery When Wet album and for the New Jersey album, because Bob Rock had already been there. Like, Bruce Fairbairn was the producer, but Bob Rock was kind of like his apprentice, you could say. So Bob Rock was present when those albums were created, at least when Slippery When Wet was created. I don't know if he was there when New Jersey was created as well. But either way, Bruce Fairbairn's involvement with the band was limited to the albums Slippery When Wet and New Jersey, and it was his presence that really that created that, or that was kind of like the extra little nudge that made it a real band. And Bob Rock says about the recording of Keep the Faith in 1992, it was John and it was the band. The magic of the pulling together that John Fairbairn, who was known for putting one song with a horn section on every rock record that he produced, had created. So if you look it up, you'll see it. One a horn section song on every rock album. And but he was a trumpet player, so he would call in another musician that he knew, and then they would like play the horns. So he played the horn on Social Disease, Bruce, and they would play the horns, and then they would just like dub it to make it sound like there was a whole section of people, like were like six horn players, but it was just two. And so that's really interesting. It was not just that he had a horn section in on every album. It was also that he played it himself. So I think that with that, now that you know this backstory about Social Disease, regardless of what you thought about the song, um, um, it really gives it a whole new meaning. And now about the meaning of the song, because Social Disease is, that was my first go-to. It was like, let's have a look at the lyrics. What is this song about? And I was like, what? This is a really weird song. Like I couldn't make out of the lyrics what it was about. I was like, is this about disease? Like a disease that you contract from having sex or something? I was like, I thought it was just such a weird song. But I was like, there has to be an explanation. It's probably because I'm not a native English speaker that I can't understand it. So I started Googling it, but it is known that a lot of people have seen really weird things in this song, and uh, um, ultimately I found a page that had a couple of clippings from interviews specifically about this song, and it was very obvious from there. It's like, no, it's just meant to be like a fun party song, like a summer party, yes, with a few sexual references, but like they're upbeat, they're fun, they're not serious. So yeah, so let's just see it as you know, the way it was meant, which is it's just a fun song, like Wild in the Streets, which we'll see at side B of the album. Yeah, so maybe that's the life lesson. Um, don't look too deep into it. Sometimes something is just meant to be fun and not to be have like some kind of like deeper meaning. And at the same time, the early death of Bruce Fairbairn, um, uh, let it be fun, seize the day, carpe diem. So his death was never, it never became known how he died. Nobody knows this. There's not even like, rumors or something. So yeah, of unknown causes at the age of 49. So yeah, if I think if there would be a life lesson in Social Disease, yeah, I would say it's carpe diem, seize the day. Okay, see you next time for Wanted Dead or Alive. Bye.